Was the monster in the classroom always there, hiding in plain sight? Or did the cobbles just create the perfect storm for a tragedy that's now shattering two families? We've watched villains come and go on Coronation Street for decades, but what Megan Walsh has done to Will and Sam isn't just another crime. It's a complete psychological demolition of two young lives. As we jump into this reckoning, I really want you to ask yourself, in a battle between a master manipulator like Megan and a broken child like Sam, can justice ever actually feel like enough? I mean, think about it. Even if she goes to prison, the scars she's left are practically invisible and might never fully heal. The air in Weatherfield has turned so thick with tension lately that you can almost feel it through the screen. It's that kind of heavy atmosphere that always comes right before a total collapse. Megan Walsh, the woman who is supposed to be an athletics coach and a mentor, has finally been cornered. The truth she tried to bury under a mountain of lies and stolen cash is finally catching up to her. We're seeing a woman who is literally packing her bags for Paris with 2,000 pounds of stolen money while her young victim, Will Driscoll, was left picking up the pieces of a life he doesn't even recognize anymore. But the real tragedy here is the ripple effect. It didn't just stop with Will. Sam Blakeman, a boy whose brilliance and logic were always a shield, has seen that shield shatter into a million pieces of psychosis. It's devastating to watch, isn't it? This isn't just a simple whodunit storyline. It's more like a "why did we let this happen" scenario. The situation got this bad because Megan preyed on the one thing every teenager wants: to be treated like an adult. She used Will's desire to grow up as a weapon against him. And by doing that, she accidentally triggered a mental health crisis in Sam that's now the most heartbreaking thing on the street. It's a classic case of collateral damage. The person who knows too much is suffering just as much as the person the crime was actually committed against. Why did Megan Walsh ever think she could get away with this? Honestly, I think it's just the pure arrogance of someone who thinks they're smarter than everyone else. As a teacher and a coach, she clearly felt superior to the families around her. She even called Will's family delusional, while the police were literally knocking on her door. That is a special kind of coldness, don't you think? She didn't just groom Will, she groomed the whole environment. She made herself look so indispensable that when the first crack started to show, everyone just wanted to look the other way. When the police finally caught her trying to flee the country, she wasn't even sorry. She was just annoyed that she was going to miss her flight to Paris. If you look closely at her behavior, it's like there's a total vacuum where her heart should be. There's no empathy there at all. All she cares about is control and feeling validated through the eyes of a child. When she's sitting in that interview room with DS Lisa Connor Swain, she isn't crying because she feels bad for what she did to Will. She's crying because her dream of a fancy life in France is disappearing. It's honestly chilling to see a character who has zero maternal or even basic human instinct. She's confronted with the fact that Will admitted they had a sexual relationship, and her first response is to call him a liar. We often talk about grooming as if it's just one act, but these sources show us that it's more like a virus that spreads. Megan's actions didn't stay contained. They infected Sam's mind and created this sinister Roy hallucination that won't leave him alone. This really changes how we look at her as a villain. She isn't just a predator in the physical sense, she's a reality distorter. She poisoned the way a young boy sees the most trustworthy man on the cobbles, Roy Cropper. I think the show is doing a great job of showing how cowards like Megan operate. She's not some cartoon villain. She's a person who had 100 chances to stop, but she just kept going because her own ego was more important than a child's safety. Do you agree with people who say she's misunderstood? Personally, I think that's nonsense. She saw those kids breaking right in front of her, and she didn't care. Megan is a textbook narcissist. She truly believes that what she wants, a trip to France or a connection with a student, is more important than the law. Her ego is like a suit of armor. Even when Will tells the truth, she tries to make him sound crazy by calling him infatuated. It's a defense mechanism she uses to keep believing she's a good person. It's a psychological trick predators use to sleep at night, and it's disgusting to watch. Now, let's talk about Sam's fractured reality, because this is just heavy. His psychosis didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's what happens when a child's brain suffers an extreme moral injury. Sam is a kid who lives for logic and truth. When he found out that the adult world could lie this much, and that he had to be the one to expose it, his brain basically short-circuited. He couldn't handle the fact that the Megan he knew was actually a monster. So, his mind created a protector version of Roy Cropper to help him cope. But the problem is, this evil Roy is born out of Sam's fear, not the real Roy's kindness. The terror Sam feels when he looks at his own dad and sees a threat is just gut-wrenching. He feels completely on his own because if he can't trust Roy, he feels like he can't trust anyone. There's also a lot of hidden guilt there. Sam probably feels like Will's pain is his fault, and that's a weight no kid should have to carry. He even smashed his own telescope because he was so panicked. I look at Sam's hallucinations as a kind of mental scaffolding. Since the adults in his life were too busy dealing with the fallout of the crime, his mind tried to build its own support system. But that system is built on paranoia. This sinister Roy is basically Sam's inner voice of survival telling him to rid himself of Will before he gets hurt. The writers are being really brave here, don't you think? Most soaps would just show a kid being a bit sad, but showing a full psychotic breakdown where he attacks Roy with a stool is raw and honest. It reminds us that mental health struggles aren't always quiet or polite. They can be violent and terrifying. Jude Reardon is doing the work of his life here. He perfectly captures the fear of a child who can no longer trust his own eyes. This is a clear case of trauma-induced psychosis. Sam's evil Roy is just his brain stuck in a fight-or-flight loop. That's why he's seeing tracking devices and hearing voices through his headphones. And then we have the war between the families. The fight between Nick Tilsley and Ben Driscoll is such a deep look at how people handle anger when they feel helpless. Nick can't physically hurt Megan, so he lashes out at Ben instead. He's blaming Ben for not seeing what was going under his own roof. It's easier for Nick to make Ben the villain than to admit that the world is just a dangerous place for a son. Underneath all that rage, Nick is just a dad who is terrified that he's lost his son forever. And Ben? He feels like a total failure because he's being told he didn't protect his boy. This isn't just two dads yelling. It's a clash of how they think they should parent. Nick wants total protection, while Ben was trying to give Will some space, and Megan just took advantage of that space. It shows that there's no perfect way to parent when a predator is involved. The way people are blaming the Driscolls is just a reflection of how society often blames families for letting it happen. Personally, I actually feel for Ben. Nick's anger is understandable, but it's making things worse. By attacking Will's family, he's cutting Sam off from the only person who actually understands what he's going through, Will himself. They should be working together, but the Tilsley ego is getting in the way. It's projective identification in action. Nick is taking his own feelings of failure and dumping them on Ben. If Ben is the bad dad, then Nick doesn't have to face the fact that he was also completely in the dark until everything exploded. It's a way to feel superior when everyone actually feels like they've lost. And just when you think things are moving toward justice, we get the news that Megan is out on bail. Can you imagine how that feels for Will and Sam? For them, the whole community is now a hunting ground again. The legal system might not think she's a flight risk anymore, but the psychological risk to those boys is massive. Will's reaction to Bethany Platt really says it all. She tries to give him a simple, supportive touch, and he completely recoils, accusing her of touching him up. His brain has lost the ability to tell the difference between kindness and assault. His internal world is so guarded that even a nice gesture feels like an attack. The bail decision is like a slap in the face. It tells the victims that the law doesn't care about their fear. Having Megan back in the community makes the trauma physical again. She's not just a memory anymore. She's someone they might see at the corner shop. It's an infuriating move by the writers, but it's brilliant because it makes us feel the same anxiety the characters are feeling. Will skipping his PE exam and disappearing is a classic sign of PTSD. He can't function when he knows his abuser is walking free. He isn't being mean to Bethany. He's just a survivor who is constantly on high alert, but there is one bright spot, the connection with Carla Connor. Why is Carla the one who found Sam when he was missing? It's because she's been there. Her own history with psychosis after the factory roof collapse means she doesn't look at Sam with pity. She looks at him with recognition. She doesn't see a crazy kid. She sees someone fighting a war that nobody else can see. Helping Sam is clearly helping Carla heal, too. She's talking to the version of herself that was once terrified and alone. She knows that Sam's biggest fear is being locked up, and she's the only one who can tell him the truth, that the hospital is a place to get safe, not a prison. Carla is like a bridge. While Nick and Leanne are trying to fix Sam, Carla is just trying to reach him. It changes the whole vibe of his recovery. It's not just about doctors. It's about someone finally validating that what he's seeing feels real to him. I love how the show is using its own history here. It shows that these struggles don't just go away, but they can become a tool to help someone else. Carla is the real MVP of this story. She's provided co-regulation, basically using her own calm to help Sam's nervous system settle down. She knows the paranoia because she lived it. That shared experience creates a bond that even his own father can't provide right now because Nick is just too emotionally involved. But it's not just the families involved who are feeling the heat. The whole street is falling apart. We've got Carl and Kevin's feud turning into a literal gun standoff. The truth about Carl sabotaging Kevin's brakes came out, and now things are at a breaking point. This all ties into the same theme: broken trust. When someone like Megan breaks the trust in a classroom, it makes everyone look at their neighbors differently. Then you have Debbie Webster, who is struggling with dementia and mistakes a balloon pop for a gunshot. It mirrors what Sam is going through. The world has become a place where you can't trust your own senses. Weatherfield is like a pressure cooker right now, and Megan Walsh is the one who turned the heat all the way up. We're seeing collective trauma. The whole community is reacting to her crime. Everyone is hypervigilant, and every secret, like whatever Gary and Sarah are hiding, feels like another disaster waiting to happen. The monster isn't just Megan anymore. It's the scary realization that you never really know who is living next door to you. So, where do we go from here? I think we're heading for a courtroom scene that is going to be absolutely harrowing. But I don't think it's Megan who will crack first. I think Will, with Bethany's support, is going to find his voice. But Sam's testimony? That's the real wild card. If he can figure out which Megan is real and which one is in his head, his words might be what finally puts her away. But don't expect a perfectly happy ending. Even if she gets a life sentence, Sam's journey back to being the old Sam is going to take a long, long time. He's lost that innocent spark, and it's been replaced by a kind of wary wisdom that no child should ever have to possess. And keep an eye on Nick. His feud with Ben Driscoll is far from over. I wouldn't be surprised if his need to find someone to blame leads to a physical fight that puts one of them in a hospital bed next to Sam. Now, I want to hear from you guys because this storyline is sparking a lot of debate. First off, let's talk about the blame game. Do you think Nick is actually right to blame Ben and Eva for missing the signs of Megan's grooming? Or is he just using them as a punching bag because he's scared? At what point does a parent's blindness actually become negligence? It's a tough question, so let's get into it in the comments. And what about Sinister Roy? Does using such a beloved character as a hallucination villain work for you as a viewer? Or do you think it's a step too far and ruins Roy's legacy? I'm really curious to see where you stand on that one. If you're as gripped by this Coronation Street reckoning as I am, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss our next deep dive into the cobbles, especially with Megan's trial coming up and the fallout from that gun drama at the garage. We're going to be here for every twist and turn, including our next theory on who actually put that tracking device in Sam's bag. Was it real, or was it another hallucination? Was that monster in the classroom always there, hiding in plain sight? Or did Weatherfield just create the perfect storm for a tragedy that's now breaking two families apart? We've seen plenty of villains come and go on Coronation Street over the years, but what Megan Walsh has done to Will and Sam is something else entirely. It's not just a crime, it's a total mental demolition of two young boys. I want you to think about this for a second. In a fight between a master manipulator like Megan and a kid as broken as Sam, can justice ever really be enough? I mean, even if she goes to prison, those scars don't just disappear, do they? The air on the cobbles feels so heavy right now, like that kind of pressure you feel right before a massive storm hits. Megan Walsh, the coach who is supposed to be a mentor and someone these kids could look up to, has finally been cornered. The truth she tried to bury under a mountain of lies and stolen cash is finally catching up to her. It's wild to think she was actually packing her bags for Paris with 2,000 pounds of stolen money while her victim, Will, was left picking up the pieces of his life. But the real tragedy is the ripple effect. Sam Blakeman, who has always been so brilliant and logical, has seen his whole world shatter into psychosis. This isn't just a simple whodunit mystery. It makes you stop and wonder why we let it get this far in the first place. Megan preyed on the one thing teenagers want more than anything, to be treated like an adult. She used Will's transition into manhood as a weapon against him. And in doing that, she accidentally broke Sam's mind, too. It's a classic case of collateral damage. The person who knows too much ends up suffering just as much as the person the crime was actually committed against. Have you ever noticed how a secret in a small town like Weatherfield acts more like a virus than a story? Why did Megan Walsh ever think she'd get away with this? Honestly, I think it's just the pure arrogance of someone who thinks they're the smartest person in the room. Even with the police at her door, she was calling Will's family delusional. That's a special kind of cold, isn't it? She didn't just groom Will. She groomed the entire situation so that everyone would look the other way. When the police finally caught her trying to flee the country, she wasn't even sorry. She was just annoyed that the investigation was making her miss her flight. IT really feels like there's a total vacuum where her heart should be. There's no empathy there at all. All she cares about is her own control. When she's sitting in that interview room with DS Lisa Connorswain, she isn't crying for Will. She's crying because her dream of a fancy life in France is dead. It's chilling to see a character with zero maternal or human instinct. She's faced with the fact that Will admitted they were together, and her first move is to call a child a liar. How does someone even sleep at night after that? We often talk about grooming as if it's just one act, but it's actually more like a poison that spreads through everything. Megan's actions didn't stay contained to one person. They infected Sam's mind and created this sinister Roy hallucination that won't leave him alone. This really changes how we look at her as a villain. She isn't just a predator. She's a reality distorter. She poisoned the way a young boy looks at the most trustworthy man on the street, Roy Cropper. I think the show is doing a great job of showing that these kinds of people are cowards at heart. They have 100 chances to stop, but they just keep going because their own ego is more important than a child's safety. I've heard some people say she might be misunderstood, but personally, I think that's nonsense. She saw those kids breaking right in front of her, and she just didn't care. Megan is a textbook narcissist. She truly believes that what she wants, a trip to France or a connection with a student, is more important than the law. Her ego is like a suit of armor. Even when Will tells the truth, she tries to make him sound crazy. It's a psychological trick predators use to keep believing they are the good guy, and it's honestly disgusting to watch. Now, let's talk about Sam's fractured reality, because this is just gut-wrenching. His psychosis didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's what happens when a child's brain suffers an extreme moral injury. Sam is a kid who lives for logic and truth. When he found out the adult world could lie this much, his brain basically short-circuited. He couldn't handle the fact that the Megan he knew was actually a monster. So, his mind created a protector version of Roy to help him cope. But the problem is, this evil Roy